Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Improved Podcast, the official podcast of Classic Studios. I'm your host, Chase Collins, and if you're new here at the Improved Podcast, we are building a community of creatives who have other stuff going on in their lives, and their creative hobbies are just that. They're hobbies that we are working on in our spare time and in our free time, and I sort of use this podcast as like an accountability tool for myself so I can give you all updates and status reports on my different projects that I have going on. Hopefully, get some goals done along the way. If you have any goals or projects that you're working on that you want to tell me about, shoot me an email at theimprovedpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. This week, we have a huge podcast that I'm super excited to talk to you all about. For those of you who don't know, I am a screenwriter or an aspiring screenwriter, unproduced, I guess, non-WGA, but I am trying to break in. I'm a part of a couple of different, I'm a part of one writers group, and I have a couple of different projects that I'm working on. And the big thing today is that we're going to be talking about is the WGA Writers Strike of 2023 is over. They signed a deal this past week, and I am super excited to be able to break all of that down for you all. Sort of from the perspective of a non-WGA member. I don't know a lot of what this stuff means, but I do know how big of a deal this is. The fact that we were able to get this deal, is very much an existential threat sort of to the profession. A lot of different things we'll talk about sort of have implications on what the future of this profession could have looked like if we didn't get such a great deal. So I am excited to break all of that down for you all. There is, of course, time codes below in the description, so if you want to jump around to your favorite section, feel free to go ahead and do that. And then at the end, I'll sort of give you an update on the different projects that I have been working on this week as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and roll the intro music, and then we'll be right back to talk about the new 2023 WGA contract with the studios.
Improved Podcast. Improved Podcast. Improved Podcast. Improved Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the writer's strike is over. How exciting is that? 148 days, the second longest in WGA history, and woo! It has been a long time, and I am so happy and proud of the negotiators and everything like that. Of course, I'm pre-WGA, don't have a representation or manager or anything like that, but I am certainly proud of my brothers and sisters in arms or in writing as they're able to, make this happen. And, the WGA leadership who is able to negotiate on behalf of these writers and everything like that is just so awesome and encouraging. And I'm really glad that the studio, was able to come to the table and make a fair deal. I think one of the reasons why this strike sort of went on for so long, almost 6 months or something like that, is because of just how resolved the writers were in their position, I guess. This felt like a very much an existential threat to the craft of screenwriting, and in order for the union to feel comfortable with going back to work, certain things had to be met that I think was just not really on the studio's radar as being like a big enough deal to warrant this type of response, but it certainly was. And of course, there's 1,000 things we can talk about, and then we'll get into most of them that are really important to writers and are really important to the craft and the union that they were fighting for, that the studio maybe just wasn't tracking, or hopefully not, they weren't just blatantly ignoring it because they had other agendas or other ideas with which they were going to operate in this new environment. And of course, I'm talking about like the streaming world. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, all of those different new technologies that have come into the industry that have really helped, for better or worse, reshape the industry as a whole, right? And so from what I understand, back in like 2008, when the previous writer's strike was going on, 2007, 2008, the previous writer's strike was going on, the WGA brought up streaming as a point of concern because Netflix, was just introducing their streaming platform. They were probably the only people who were doing that. Maybe Amazon Prime was around at that point, but certainly not producing original content. But the streaming point was brought up by the WGA back in 2007, 2008, and the studios, from what I understand, they essentially said like, hey, let's wait before we do anything crazy and make a new deal or anything like that, or incorporate this into the contract. Let's put a pause on this and just we'll reassess in a couple of years. And then lo and behold, between 2008 and 2023, streaming took over the entire industry, right? Like Hollywood's borderlines, sole focus is on the streaming platforms right now, especially when you have seems like new streamers coming out every other month. You have Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Roku, Peacock, there's Hulu, there's Netflix, there's Prime, there's Apple TV, and the list just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And so that's quickly became the priority for a lot of these studios, was launching their own streaming platform and getting a consistent number of subscribers, right? And that obviously translates into money for them, but because streaming is streaming and it's not traditional television, the pay structure is a little bit different compared to, or it's never been done before. So of course studios interpret it as something that's most favorable to them, and writers and actors and directors, I guess, maybe they signed a deal pretty early on, I know, but they want it to be more shaped like traditional television, where you get paid every time the show is streamed and every time there's a viewer watching it, and there's residuals, right? But with streaming, that doesn't really exist, or at least it didn't until after this deal was made. So I'm just super grateful that those who are in the union, those who were on the board of negotiators, actually, listened to the concerns of the writers and were willing to stand up for this and not willing to just take whatever deal the studios thought was fair enough, right? They were truly trying to preserve this craft as an industry. And so that's awesome. And they were really, something I saw early on in the strike was that this is a fight not for current writers, but for future writers, right? If these points don't get hammered away now, there won't be future writers. Everything will be, written by AI and then punched up by writers to, make it actually a coherent product, of course. So we are very excited, very happy with this deal. Of course, it wasn't, I don't think the writers got everything that they asked for, but they got, a lot. Very significant, made some huge gains, and so we're going to be diving into all of that right now, and breaking down some of the big picture things that I think are most important and are, of course, exciting to me. There's, of course, links in the description to the actual WGA contract, and if you want to get into all the nitty gritty, I won't be doing it super nitty gritty. I'll be going just high level things that I find are interesting. And of course, I do. Let me caveat all this stuff. I don't know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just sort of reading what it has been published based on the WGA contract. Okay, so yeah, some big picture things to know. I think there's around 15 or so. We'll go through probably maybe 5 to 10 of them, because those are the big things that I think are interesting. First thing I want to note is it's a 3-year contract, so it's good from September 25th, 2023 through May 1st, 2026. So earliest we could have another strike is 2026. Hopefully that will not be the case, and we will be able to sign a new deal before then in 2026. So that's awesome. Another awesome thing is the minimum basic agreement will increase by 5% immediately, and then will increase by 4% in 2024, and then by 3.5% in 2025, I believe. So that is huge. So it seems like over the course of the next 2.5 years or so, the minimum basic agreement will increase by 12.5% on average. So that's a great thing for these writers. And I know that's not for every contract, but for the most part, that's generally what it's going to be. There's also increased health pension contribution rates and increased health and pension contributions for writing teams. So by the second year of the contract, the health fund will increase by 12% of reportable earnings, or at least will be 12% of reportable earnings, and the WGA has at their discretion the ability to say if any additional 0.5% goes to pension plans or health funds, and each writer on a writing team for a script will receive pension and health contributions as well. So that's just great, looking out for the long-term care of these writers, these creatives who who need it, right? Everyone needs to be taken care of. Now, some of the big factors that we're going to dive into right now is artificial intelligence. That's something that's very, interesting to me. I wrote a short film kind of about artificial intelligence. It is out. You can go ahead and watch that, especially if you're signed up for the CLSC Studios Newsletter. You can watch that right now. But AI, right? So AI, this is what the language is in the WGA. What do I say? What's the website? The summary of the WGA minimum basic agreement. So, and there's links to all of this. But AI can't write or rewrite literary material, and AI generated material will not be considered source material. AI generated material can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or separated rights. So that's huge. That is such a good. I'm so glad that they're like incorporating language like that into the industry now, because I have a feeling that most AI will not be copyrightable. Of course, this isn't like confirmed yet. This is my suspicion based on what I know about copyright law, which is very little. But from what I understand, copyright can only be attributed to something that's been created by a human, right? So AI isn't human. So just because you entered in a prompt into ChatGPT or into OpenAI or whatever, that doesn't mean that you are now the owner of that copyright. The AI created it, and it can't be copyrighted because there's no human to associate it with. That's my understanding of it, and it sounds like this language that the WGA and the studios are adopting is in line with that philosophy. So the AI generated material cannot be considered source material, and yeah, so I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. It sounds like a good thing to me. Any separation between AI and a writer, I think, is better. Now, here's where a second bullet under artificial intelligence that I don't know exactly why anyone would do this, but I'll read it out anyway. So, a writer can choose to use AI when performing writing services if the company consents and provided that the writer follows applicable company policies. But the company can't require the writer to use AI software when performing writing services. So that's interesting. So it seems like it's a handshake agreement, right? You have to say, hey, am I allowed to use AI when writing? And the company has to say yes. That's the only way AI can be used when developing like a show or a movie under this new agreement, which I think is a good thing. I would never use AI to help generate ideas or come up with thoughts or anything like that. I think that's just not for me. Maybe I'm, like a grandpa yelling at clouds right now, like, hey, you kids, back in my day, we had to come up with ideas before we started writing. And I don't know. I think that's true. I like that this language is in there. I would rather the language just be like writers can't use AI to generate material no matter what. I think that would be nice, but I guess having, asking permission is probably a good thing rather than just like a blanket ban, but won't catch me using AI. No way. Also, the company must disclose to the writer if any materials given to the writer have been generated by AI or incorporated AI generated material. So I think that's nice, just full transparency regarding premises or whatever that have been developed by AI. I don't know. Interesting. Hopefully this stuff doesn't just get like lost in the black letter contracts and like in the fine print or whatever. But also, the WGA reserves the right to assert that exploitation of writers' material to train AI is prohibited by the minimum basic agreement or other law. So that's also huge, I guess. I don't really understand how the WGA will like confirm that that's happening, right? Or that isn't happening, because as far as I'm concerned, no studio owns an AI to develop, whatever material, right? Of course, Google and Bing have their AI softwares like ChatGPT and stuff like that, but just because a writer puts in that, hey, my material can't be used to train AI, doesn't mean that those other companies are going to be using that, or that the studio has to honor that in any way. So I don't really understand what that means. Maybe some smarter folks will understand, and once the full contract gets released, we can dive into that. Of course, I don't want my scripts to be used to train AIs, but I also don't see how I can prevent anyone from just scraping my scripts off the internet or whatever, and then publishing or using them to train whatever algorithm. We'll see though. I don't know. I might just be talking out of my face right now. So we'll see. We'll see what comes from that. So that's sort of everything on AI. Again, I think this is one of the bigger existential threats to the creative arts, and specifically, creative writing in general, because that's what I'm talking about right now, obviously, with the WGA. But I'm glad that they were able to get a lot of this language in there. I think it's very important, so that, I can't help but think back to the, what is it called? The Secret Invasion TV show on Disney Plus right now from the Marvel universe, where the whole intro sequence was generated by AI. And I liked the premise of that. I thought that was an interesting idea, incorporating AI into this, espionage spy thriller TV show about, who's who and, stolen identity and stuff like that. I think that's an interesting, layer on top of the themes of the show. Of course, it didn't go over very well because the AI was like poorly trained and poorly made. But I think that was the point. I don't know. I liked it. But I'm glad that now that's sort of probably going to stop happening anymore. I think Secret Invasion was certainly a product of its time. So in addition to artificial intelligence clauses, there's also improved terms for screenwriter employment. So guaranteed second step, accelerated payment structure for flat deals. Also, this is something that's interesting. So for streaming features, so movies that were produced by streamers, so that's talking about like your Red Notices, whatever other streaming exclusive movies that Netflix has these days. Oh man, there was one that was great that I saw recently. It was Who Cloned Tyrone. That was a fantastic movie with John Boyega and Mr. Jamie Foxx. Fantastic movie. But the point of it is, for a streaming feature that cost over $30 million to produce, the minimum basic agreement for that will be $100,000 for a writer, and that's an 18% increase from the current rate. And then there's also residuals tied into that as well, and we'll get into residuals here now. So there are, I guess, improved terms in high budget subscription video on demand. So that's HBSVOD, high budget subscription video on demand. So those are, films produced for movies or for streamers. And what they say here is there's going to be increased foreign streaming residuals, and there will be viewership based streaming bonuses, which takes effect in January 2024, as well as streaming data transparency. So companies, studios shall provide the guild under a non-disclosure agreement the total number of hours streamed both domestically and internationally. And this is a huge deal. I might go on a bit of a tangent here because this is like one of the first times that companies have been required by contract to reveal their streaming data and provide any type of transparency. It's very interesting, and I'm very excited to see what comes from this. Of course, it's under an NGA, so people like us won't really get access to that data. But as soon as, I'm sure the actors are going to have some similar language in their deal in order to, obtain residuals. But this essentially requires, streamers to provide data on how popular their TV shows are. And of course, like, we've all seen, like, OMG, Stranger Things was viewed like 1 billion minutes. And it's like, what does that even mean? 1 billion minutes? Like, who cares? What does that actually turn into? So this, I think, provides a little bit more clarity regarding, like, what that actually translates to in terms of, like, a dollar amount, and then what percentage of that dollar amount can go towards writers or actors or directors or producers or whatever. Those residuals are, critical for a lot of these, writers to make a livelihood and, live off of the work that they've produced in the past. And so it's very good that this streaming data is going to be, provided, and hopefully these writers can, start earning money off of these wildly popular TV shows that have longevity, that aren't just like a flash in the pan and then you'll never watch again, but will be streamed continuously throughout, the next 20 years or 30 years or whatever. So it's very good. I'm definitely excited if the Actors Guild is able to get this type of language in their contract as well. I have a feeling a lot of this information is going to start leaking out, and we will learn just how big these streaming companies are, what type of numbers they're actually doing. It's going to be so interesting to learn about this, and I have a feeling like if these streamers have been, doing smoke and mirrors, pumping up their numbers, and they're actually not that big, I have a feeling a couple of these streamers could, like, go down. Of course, I'm not really explaining this very well, but there's a lot of rumors that, like, these streamers aren't actually as big as they are, or aren't actually are even more popular than they say they are. And so that could cause, stock prices to drop or stock prices to increase, and then suddenly, like, there's more money floating around Hollywood and there can be more movies being produced. I don't know. It's just exciting to the idea of more transparency regarding these streaming data is just, like, very exciting. So we'll see in the next couple of years what's going to happen. So those are, kind of the things that I think are, like, very interesting and exciting. There's, of course, more in the preliminary agreement that has since been signed. I was debating on mentioning this in last episode of the Improved Podcast because I had heard rumors that, the WGA and the studios are going to sign a deal on Tuesday. Maybe they'll sign it on Wednesday. And I wanted to mention that, because I record on Sundays and release on Mondays nowadays. And I wanted to mention, like, this is happening. Get ready. But I didn't want to be wrong, and I didn't want, just in case, like, something happened and then there was no deal signed. So I didn't want to put the cart before the horse. So I'm glad that I waited, and I'm glad I was able to break down some of these more interesting to me aspects of the new deal. It is, feels exciting to be in the writer's room again for the first time in 148 days, so to speak. So yeah, that's kind of everything I wanted to break down maybe for the WGA writer's strike. I hope it gave you a little bit of a flavor of why this strike was so important and what was won and earned by these by the union. And just congratulations to everybody and great work, team. I do want to quickly talk about some of the projects that I am working on. I am continuing to work on my high school comedy feature that I'm sort of brainstorming on right now and working through and thinking about how I want to write that story. It's October 1st as I'm recording this, so I have about 2 months to write this sucker, and I want to write this thing. I'm going to just, work through it these next couple of weeks and just get a rough draft done because I'm excited to be done with it. I haven't even started writing this thing, and I'm already excited to be done with it. That goes to show maybe I shouldn't be writing this, but I'm going to anyways. Just take a break, have some fun writing a low-stakes film about high school and friendship and everything like that. So that's going to be awesome. I am still in my writers group, and I'm working with them. I'm still waiting on feedback for my script that I submitted, which is going to be so much fun to hear their thoughts. But in the meantime, I'm attending these industry talks, and they sort of talked about like the state of the industry now that the strike is over. And it's very funny, right? During the strike, a lot of non-WGA writers were very motivated, and they were like, oh, this is a great time to link up with a representative in order to push your career forward and everything like that. I said this on the podcast an earlier episode, and I said, like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Like, all of these agents and managers and writers are out picketing for us, and I'm going to, try and take advantage of that situation. I was like, no, thank you. That doesn't sound cool to me. So I just kind of, continued writing for the last 148 days. Of course, I don't have a new screenplay to show for it, which is kind of annoying. I can't believe I didn't get another script done or something like that. But I did a major rewrite, whatever. So now that the strike is over, it feels like, oh, now is a good time to maybe like start trying to have those conversations with agents or managers or representation of some sort. And then during the industry talk for my writers group, they were like, actually, now's not a very good time because all of the writers who already had representation have their strike scripts that they're ready to start pushing and are ready to get back to work. And the managers, everyone's sort of hustling, and the industry is in flux right now. They're trying to figure out, like, oh, what are we going to put into production? What aren't we going to put in production? All that jazz. And apparently between October and December is just a very busy time for writers in general, and Hollywood in general. And then things sort of slow down during, I guess, the new year. And so that's probably when I'll start really putting feelers out there for agents and managers and representations and stuff like that. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'm excited about. Definitely want to, find a manager, find a representation, sell a script. I think that would be just such an exciting time, and, produce a movie or two. How fun would that be? Or get a script produced into a movie. I'm just, excited for the future of this industry, and it feels like there's new life, right? All of a sudden there's new life in this industry, in this craft and everything like that. So that's about everything for me, y'all. I don't really have anything else I need to talk about today. I'm still working on my project, still working on my super secret project, which is taking up a lot of my mental bandwidth right now. I wish I could think more about this creative stuff, but I just can't right now, and you guys will learn why here in the next month or two, and that's going to be just awesome, just the most exciting thing ever, and can't wait to share all of that. Beyond that, if you'd like to get into contact with me about any projects that you're working on, please shoot me an email at theimprovedpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Green Bean for all of our musical themes, intros, and outros alike. Give him a follow at Green Bean Music on Instagram. Again, I want to shout out you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for leaving 5-star reviews. We love those 5-star reviews. And then, is there anything else that I need to share? I think that's about everything. If you haven't already, please do sign up for the CLSC Studios Newsletter. I have the newsletter coming out this Friday, which is the very first CLSC Studios Newsletter. Super excited about that. Super exciting times. And like I mentioned sort of in the middle of this podcast, but if you want to watch my short film that I wrote and produced with my good friend Elijah, that is out on YouTube now. All you have to do is search Dawn, a sci-fi student film, and you will find it. It is just a fun project that I'm super grateful to be a part of, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know if you liked it or not. Leave a comment. Tell you came from the Improved Podcast. That would be funny. All right. With that, thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great day. I will see you all next week for another episode of the Improved Podcast. Goodbye.